Now I want to stop there because the best interest of the child comes up a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone likes to use best interest of the child.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very lofty phrase. I want to make a special note that Supreme Court Blessings versus Freestone is a Supreme Court case that says the benefit that the custodial parent receives via child support is merely incidental. Now that's a paraphrase.
Okay.
But the custodial parent, the mother receiving child support, is merely incidental to the transaction. Child support is so that states can be reimbursed through the federal government for the cost of the welfare.
So it has nothing to do with the best interest of the child.
It doesn't even have to do with the mother. So when these judges are saying, well, the best interest is the child, objection, Your Honor. And a little aside here, if you're representing yourself pro se, and I have not had to get in front of a judge, and so I'm not giving legal advice, but I'm just saying, give it some thought to become a belligerent objector. The things that I've read, if you're going to represent yourself, you need to learn that.
Yeah.
And that is an aside, but objection, Your Honor. This is not in the best interest of the child, and here's why, and then you quote Blessings versus Freestone.
Yeah, well, the other interesting thing about the best interest of the child, and I've mentioned this in several videos, is that the Texas Family Code is 1,525 pages. There is either direct or indirect references to the best interest of the child at least 140 times. And the state policy is that certain things should be done in the best interest of the child. Now, throughout the Texas family law, there are definitions for many, many, many things. The best interest of the child is never once defined. So the best interest of the child becomes whatever one person might think at one time. If you're in front of one judge, the best interest of the child might be this. If you're in front of another judge, the best interest of the child might be that. If there's an attorney or guardian ad litem or caseworker, they might be able to determine the best interest of the child. The person who does not know what the best interest of the child is the parent. Parent never knows the best interest of the child. And the best interest of the child is merely an opinion. It's a whim. There's no objective standard. This is such a big issue. There was a guy, I believe, out of British Columbia who wrote about this whole best interest of the child doctrine. And he said, it's undefinable. Nobody knows what it is. It becomes a weapon that is used against families. They commit injustice and fraud. They break up families, and then they say they're acting in the best interest of the child. Now, going back to the issue that I've been fighting for more, the divorce reform issue, my definition for the best interest of the child, and I would love to see the I would love to see the legislature define what this elusive phrase is, being that it's used all over the place, all the time. My definition is this: the best interest of the child in almost every situation is to be raised in an intact home with his or her natural mother and father who learn how to get along and we hope love each other. Period. That's it. Anything less than that is acting outside of the best interest of the child. So I wish these people would quit lying about the best interest of the child. It gives them cover for wickedness. And as Hitler said, basically, if you do something in the name of the best interest of the child, you can perform a lot of evil. you can do a lot of things that the people will endure or suffer through.
If we take that as the first definition, then the second best would be the next closest thing to that, which we feel would be a 50-50 as a presumption.
Right.
Now, it is undefined. The term, the phrase is undefined, yet there is Supreme Court case law that says a child should only be removed from their family, from their mother and father, with clear and convincing evidence under strict scrutiny. But I would argue that although by definition there may not be a definition that you could go to define best interest of the child, but what we do have is judges' decisions across the board that discriminate 90% of the time against fathers.
Yeah. And that is a very good point. And I'm not saying that the mothers are not good. We're not saying that. We're saying that you would think, in general, the best interest, if they're actually doing that, there would be a little bit more parity. That there would be maybe like even 60-40 would be closer than 90-10, which is what the Attorney General says on his website. 90% of the custodial parents are mothers, and the father has 90% of the child support obligations.
So the way we're backing into this is with their own information, and that ends up being the definition.
Right. I know you've got to go pretty quickly, but maybe if I could mention one other thing. We talked about the money aspect and how the Attorney General is very intent on getting money for the state. One of the individuals who was at the meeting last year also had a case of paternity fraud. And from what I saw, I went down to Houston, I watched his case in May of this year. I drove down twice actually. The Attorney General's office knew that this man was not the father of the child. There were DNA tests that proved that. The lady who was asking for child support from this person appeared to me to have been coached by the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office knew he was not the father and that they were still trying to prosecute him and get him to pay back child support and arrearages of almost $70,000. Now, he defended himself. There were 3 attorneys there, one for him, one for the mother, and one for the office of the Attorney General. The 2 attorneys agreed this was not a case. There was no case. There were all sorts of problems with it. The lady had even mentioned that had no reason to not believe the paternity test. No chance of him being the father. Guess who objected initially? The attorney from the office of the Attorney General. They were willing to prosecute an innocent man to try to get him to pay $70,000. It was fraudulent. I believe that they were coaching the woman in what to say. This comes from one of the highest offices in the state of Texas. And that man was down there at the meeting with us. We know who he is. I don't know if you remember.
I don't know that there's a higher office. We're talking about extortion and fraud. At the highest level, he's the Attorney General for the state.
Yeah. And the thing is that I actually like the Attorney General and a lot of the stuff that he's doing. When it comes down to family law, I think he is on the wrong side. And I was sitting in an office with another attorney. This one veteran asked me if I would join him and come and just sit in there with him and take some notes. So as we talked, the attorney said, you should have seen what it used to be like for fathers 30 years ago. It's improved a whole lot since then. And then he talked about the former Attorney General, Greg Abbott, and said, in his opinion, he prosecuted it zealously. He did not feel that Attorney General Ken Paxton had the same heart to do it. Maybe he has to because he's mandated to constitutionally. So I'm hoping, I've met Ken Paxton, I voted for him. I know that there are other people within the group that have not and would not do so. I'm hoping that because I believe he's a man of faith. I believe that he's wanting to do the right thing. Maybe he's constrained in this, but I would hope they made a promise to us to fix some of these issues, and I hope that they made a promise to at least listen to us, and I would hope that it would lead to them actually fixing some things. And one final thing before we go here, we've talked with legislators about some of these issues, and it bothers me that I was told, and I'm not going to say by whom, but that there appears to be little appetite for these types of bills in this upcoming session. You're talking about issues that affects families, Democratic families, Republican families, men, women, mothers, fathers, children, grandparents, uncles, and aunts, and almost everybody in the entire state. Doesn't matter what your age group is, what your gender, what your race is, you're being affected by this, and there is no appetite to address these issues, these obvious issues of injustice. And I don't understand it.
Well,
except for the money.
Closing this out, I guess, Andrew Leone is no longer employed by the Attorney General's
He was fired the following week after the meeting. He officially resigned, but we all know what that probably meant.
But I just thought it was interesting, and to say the least. And I thought it was very unfortunate that the man who was behind setting it up, to my knowledge, he fielded all the questions, and I felt like the man had a job to do, just as Mr. Paxson does. And I think it's unfortunate that he lost his job. Was it credit to that? No. But I really think it played a part.
Well, Brandon, I know you've got to go. Thanks so much. So great to be here. Thanks so much, brother.